In this week's episode of the Investors Corner, me and Mike are talking politics. Now, the wash-up period has happened in Parliament now, and that's it. Till July the 4th, General Election Day. And guess what didn't make it through? The Renters Reform Bill, which is what I said. It would not get through, and it hasn't. But one thing that did get through was the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill. So Mike's going to talk to you about that. What does that mean for you, for leasehold properties? And is it beneficial? What are the negatives? What are the positives? And did everything get through that they said they would push through? And I will also touch upon Labour policies for the Renters Reform Bill. Now, the reason why I wanted to touch up on this is because we probably will see a Labour government. So you need to know what they plan on doing for your rental properties, investment properties, and just make sure that you do listen in, because it could have an impact on the way that you decide to vote. So sit back, relax, hope you enjoy the episode, and make sure that you subscribe to the Investors Corner.
Well, welcome back, Andy. It's just me and you today, and you promised everyone a politics chat today.
I did.
Politics chat we're going to have, and it is important, so don't switch off. I'm going to talk about the introduction of the Leasehold Reform, so the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act, which got shoved through on Friday. I'm going to call it shoved through.
Yeah, definitely shoved through.
They needed something that I'm going to read from the industry press. First reaction I want from you: Michael Gove isn't standing for re-election.
Good.
Okay. Honestly, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Career achievements or last parliamentary achievements for Michael Gove include being paid.
Yeah. No movement, hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
Complete sausage.
We'll clip that. Perfect. Complete sausage. So, yeah, Michael Gove, thanks for your service.
All the best.
All the best. Don't bother coming back anywhere near our housing industry.
Yeah.
So, the Leasehold and Freehold bill that has been put in was designed to make it fairer for leaseholders. Now, there's been some quite big omissions on the bill. So originally it was touted that the ground rents were going to be capped at £250. They're not. Unfortunately, the plan for this whole bill was to make it cheaper and easier for people to extend their lease, increasing standard lease extension to 990 years from 50 years, giving leaseholders greater transparency over service charges, making it easier and cheaper for leaseholders to take over management of their building. Now, having been a leaseholder in the past, yeah, really difficult. So I'm totally backing all of these points of why it was brought in, making it cheaper and for leaseholders to exercise their enfranchisement rights, as they will no longer have to pay their freeholders' costs while making a claim. I'll let you look into that. Extending access to redress schemes for leaseholders. Everyone needs a place to go to complain, so totally back all of that. Making buying and selling leasehold property quicker. God, I'd pray for that. Granting homeowners on private and mixed-use tenures comprehensive rights. Good. Banning opaque and excessive buildings insurance commissions. Perfect. Scrapping the presumption that leaseholders pay freeholders legal costs. 100%. Why should they? And banning the sale of new leasehold houses. 100% backing that. And lastly, removing the requirement for a new leaseholder to have owned the house or flat for 2 years before they can extend their lease or buy their freehold, which was farcical. Being in the house selling industry, that if you buy a flat with a short lease, you have to wait 2 years before you do it. So I totally back the reasons they were bringing this bill in. Now, let's have a look at a bit of industry reaction to see how the industry have kind of received what has actually gone through. The Residential Freehold Association, I'll quote, "This Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill is a defective and poorly evidenced piece of legislation which has ignored the outcomes of consultation with the industry and leaseholders alike."
Okay.
So freeholders and leaseholders think it's crap.
Right.
Cool. The government have pushed this bill through without proper scrutiny, and as a result, there is work to be done to ensure there are no unintended consequences that will negatively impact leaseholders.
Right.
Cool. and managing director of the Leasehold extension specialists Homehold, so people working on behalf of those who want to extend their leaseholds. Frustratingly, most of the changes that have been included will not come into effect immediately or even within a specified timeline. These included but delayed changes include banning leasehold houses, so there is no timeline for one of those big heralded headlines, and abolishing marriage value, which could make it cheaper for leaseholders with fewer than 80 years left to extend their leases. So if you don't know what a marriage value is, if your lease is less than 80 years, then the cost of updating your lease goes up in tandem with the value of the property increase when you have a longer lease. Hopefully that made sense. Not coming in with any specified timeline. Awesome. Instead, we'll have to wait for additional legislation to fill the gaps, and the bill's impact assessment suggests that won't be in place till 2026, which, with a new government, 2026 is optimistic.
Yeah.
The secondary legislation, which will set the key rates used to calculate lease extension and freehold purchase prices, will also have the potential to make leasehold extensions more expensive for those with leases above 80 years and lower ground rents. The lack of scrutiny, as with such a complex bill, and was consistently mentioned in the House of Lords, invariably, as with the final bill, is scrutinised by lawyers and valuers who will practice this area law. There will be errors and omissions identified. These will need to be resolved either through further legislation or litigation.
Yeah, rip it up.
So there's more laws.
Yeah.
There's more for conveyancers to do. There's more for people to argue about because there's no clarity.
And there'll be more changes further on down the line, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because they've just rushed it, put it through, haven't listened to anyone, which seems to be the normal nowadays. So,
Yeah.
Great.
Cheers, Big Mike.
Good work.
Yeah.
They've just pushed that through to try and get
something done in this Parliament.
Yeah, because they haven't got a lot done.
Yeah. So you're going to talk about Labour policies. One thing that I don't know if it's surprising or not. There was a poll in Industry Press saying that the property industry actually backs another Conservative government. Over 42% of respondents said they would back the Conservatives way, way above Labour as the next government. I can see why, because the markets generally like a Conservative government. Stability is always favoured over change in housing. So despite the utter garbage nature of what the Conservative government this time round have served up to landlords and homeowners and leaseholders, which is a good percentage of the population, people in our industry still back the Conservatives over the unknown of a Labour government, potentially because the Secretary of State for Housing and Levelling Up, Angela Rayner, doesn't even know what capital gains tax is on a property. So would you rather have a rock or a hard place?
Yeah. I think you
kind of feel where I feel at the moment.
I think you would look at Rishi and you would rather him lead the way than Keir Starmer, because he doesn't seem to know what's going on, really. But yeah, talking about the Renters Reform Bill.
Yes.
So this is all the stuff that you wanted to hear, all the exciting stuff that you want to hear about the
No one
Renters
asked for it, but we're
Reform
going
Bill.
to tell them anyway.
And guess what? It didn't make it through, so now the process has got to start again, which is what we've always said. Like I said, they don't have a clue. You've got people coming up with things that don't make any sense, that will have a negative impact for landlords, the rental supply, make more people homeless. So let's go through Labour's policies then. So these are amendments that they wanted to make to the Renters Reform Bill.
Okay.
Obviously, like I said, it hasn't got through, but more than likely, from what we're seeing, we could have a Labour government.
Yep.
From what we're seeing. So we've got to talk about these points, because potentially now the whole process has got to start again. They'll try and implement some of these starting again. So number one, want your comments on these, Mike. See what you think. So Section 21 to be removed and to come into force when the Act receives royal assent, except that any notices already served on or before that date will continue to be valid. So with this, what we've seen is that they came out before and said that they might get rid of Section 21 notices for new tenancies that come into effect. Leave all the other tenancies to one side until they get the court process together and working correctly. But what they want to do, Labour, is start it from the start, really. Obviously, that's them not thinking about the current time frame of how long it takes to get possession of property and all of that sort of stuff. So what would your thoughts be, Mark? Do you think that, look, this is probably going to happen at some point, right? They're going to abolish Section 21. There's no point saying that they're not going to do it. At some point, it will get through and that will happen. But do you start it from straight, right, every new tenancy going ahead and every previous tenancy, or would you start it from just new tenancies? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's better to filter it in because people have signed contracts on the basis of what was legal at the time. So changing that law will effectively invalidate any tenancy in the UK. So filtering it in my opinion, isn't a bad idea. And just for the record, I'm not against the removal of Section 21.
No, not at all.
Based on the advice that we got from Liam Connolly on previous episodes, who actually has read every single word of the proposed bill, and he loves it every time they bring out a new version because he has to start again. His opinion on it was it's not scary for landlords because there's still plenty of reasons you can move your tenant on if you need to move your tenant on for selling the property, coming back to the property, antisocial behaviour, non-payment of rental, etc., etc. So in some cases, the landscape for landlords, it was actually better for them. It's just the headline of removing no-fault evictions without any context scares people.
Yeah, and I think but what they need to get right is that piece of, right, if they do serve a Section 8 notice for one of those reasons, then it is a quicker period to get possession of your property back. Because at the moment, what we're seeing is 9 to 12 months, at least.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. So they need to get that
done.
done.
You market something, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first one. So the second one was landlords cannot use ground 1, which is landlord or family moving in, or ground 1A, landlord setting up, within the first 2 years of a tenancy, instead of the 6 months that was currently being discussed, or that was being discussed before in the previous Renters Reform Bill. So this is saying to me that a landlord cannot sell their property, or they can move back into property, or family member moving back into property within first 2 years of a tenancy.
Right.
Now that's pretty crazy, right? Or is that just me?
It's the sort of thing that's fine in principle, but in real life, well, what are you going to do if you're going away for a year?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You're just going to leave the house empty.
Yeah, what if
and
you're
cause a further housing crisis?
Yeah, what if your goal was that you were going overseas and you're always moving back within 12 months?
And you're totally upfront with your tenant to say that, but then you legally can't give notice anyway.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Some tenants want the house for a year. It suits you to rent it for a year. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, so
I get that it gives a degree of security of tenure to a tenant, but what if that's what both parties want? And then you legally cannot do it, which just means everyone can just forget about the original conversation. The art of the deal's dead, effectively.
Yeah. Silly one, because that just, to me, if I was a landlord and I was seeing that, and like I said, my goal was just to rent it for 12 months, I've basically lost a bit of control from my property for the first 2 years of tenancy.
Yeah.
And whatever goal I wanted to put into place, I can no longer put into place because of this stupid.
Means you're not going to rent your property for a year. You just leave it empty.
So that's going to be more stock
empty
gone.
Houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done. Not well done to you, Mike. Well done. Well done to Labour. Right, third one. An increase from 3 months to 12 months for the restricted period during which the landlord cannot relet the property after relying on ground 1 or ground 1A. So we're saying that if you were the landlord and you moved back into the property for a period of 3 months, and then let's say you move back overseas or whatever, you could not physically rent your property for 12 months. Again, losing control of things.
Yeah, I can see they're doing that to stop people using ground one as a lie.
But we have
my question to any of these things is, who's policing that?
Yeah.
What, the council? Good luck.
What's going to happen? Are they going to rely on a tenant that's moved out of the property to recheck something, and then they get reported to whoever?
Well, again, it's the same as anything else. We're now, I don't know how many years, 18, 16 years into EPCs. I still don't know who the EPC police are.
No.
I've
never even received a question or received an email saying, can you provide this, or what's the status? It's just I've never seen anything or anyone say anything about an EPC, nor have I seen anything about a right to rent check.
No,
never. So yeah,
you're just doing it out of the goodness of your own heart, and because you should. And I just think that's the same. It's like, right, well, you can't relet the house for 3 months, or you can't relet the house for 12 months. I see where you're going with it, but impossible to put into practice.
But again, you do have sometimes, I've spoken to some clients where they've had their daughter move back in for 6 months because she's over here working or in a college or something like that, and she's only going to live there for 6 months, and then they're going to relet the property after that. So with this new, legislation that they want to do, people can no longer do
again,
that.
I get it in theory, and I get where they're going with it, but there needs to be a caveat of, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just not, I just don't see it as...
Got to make it fair, haven't they? Got to make it fair. Right, next one. The new mandatory ground, 8A, relating to repeated rent arrears would become a discretionary ground. So that's pretty good, right? So instead of mandatory ground, we've got a discretionary ground on repeated rent arrears. So more than likely you can get possession of your property back sooner rather than later, and not just get to court for a judge just to say, nah, not today, on a discretionary ground. So yeah, pretty good one. Makes sense. Do you think, Mike? All good on that one?
I think, like we said, it goes back to the repeal of Section 21, is giving landlords the guarantee that when they get there, they're going to get possession.
Yeah, exactly. Next one, allow the tribunal to make rent repayment orders for additional specific breaches. Mm-hmm. So this could be stuff within the tenancy that's, you've got a landlord responsibility there. They haven't done their responsibility. They're in breach of that clause in the contract. So the tenants could request a rent repayment order for that specific breach. Now, I don't mind that. I just think if you've got responsibilities as a landlord, you do them. If you don't do them, suffer the consequences.
Yeah, 100%. So, make sure your property's maintained.
Yeah, so that's a good one. And that will, I think that will make a few of the rogue landlords out there sit up,
you've got
pay
to continue
attention.
washing out the bottom of the market. There's no doubt about it. That improves the market. That improves it for everybody. So tenants obviously have the right to heating, lighting, security, water, etc., etc., etc. And if you cannot provide that as a landlord, you shouldn't bloody be one.
Yeah, exactly. Get out of the game. Right, next one is extend Awab's law to the private rented sector. Now, Awab's law was to do with damp and mould at the property. It got left in, and this was in social housing. So this only, Awab's law is just to do with social housing at the moment. What Labour wants to do is extend it to the private rented sector. And basically it means that if you've got damp and mould at the property, it is the landlord's responsibility to have it investigated and to do works to make sure, to minimise the damp and mould in that property. Now, this is, it's got its positives, but it's got its negatives as well, because we've been in situations where we've seen that a tenant hasn't ventilated a property correctly, or done the things that they need to do as stated in their tenancy agreement on how they need to look after the property. It would be a tenant's responsibility in my eyes, because they need to ventilate correctly. They're the ones that are living at the property. But this is saying that the landlord is responsible for everything, regardless of whether the tenants have been doing their duties in the property of ventilating it. It is, if there's any signs of damp and mould, the landlord has to get it fixed.
Okay. I totally back that a landlord should be responsible for investigating if there's a report of it to ensure that something's done and it's documented. But if that damp and mould specialist comes back and said your bathroom's mouldy because you're taking 6 showers a day and you're not opening the window, these are the reasons why it is, and this is what you need to do to fix it, then that's surely defined as day-to-day use or misuse, in fact, of the property. Because as a landlord, you can take you can do your damp proofing, and you can do your damp coursing, and you can do the anti-mold paint, redecorate the bathroom, but in 2 months' time it will be ruined again, whereas another tenant wouldn't ruin it. It's a difficult one. I know why they're bringing it in, and to my eyes, there's more problems in the social housing rent sector than there is the private rented sector because of the absolute state of council housing. But it puts the onus on the landlord, and I can see that if a tenant is to report that kind of thing and it's to be found the tenant's fault, the landlord will repair it once and then look to remove their tenants. Yeah, because you can't continuously.
No,
repair.
Exactly.
I guess that's how I think it will work out in practice.
Yeah, so I can see why they're trying to do it, but
you've got to do something to make it safe.
Yeah,
because obviously having mould in a rental property causes huge health impacts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So unfortunately, you have to paint everybody one colour. Before anything can be done right, rather than taking it on a case by case basis, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Other one is new right for a tenant to reclaim any increased rent from a private landlord through a debt claim if the landlord increases the rent without issuing a Section 13 notice. So what they're saying is that if you want to increase the rent on tenancies, you must now serve a Section 13 notice, as in the way that it works currently, it's just on a periodic tenancy. But this is saying throughout all tenancies, if you want to renew it, or want to increase the rent through that tenancy, it gets sent off to a rent assessment committee. They will decide what the rent should be. But if you don't do that and the tenant pays an increased rent, then they're going to have to pay that increase in rent back to the landlord.
Phenomenal bureaucracy. I renewed a tenancy with one of my tenants recently, rang them up and said, the rent's this, the market's that, I'm happy to do a small increase because you're a great tenant. Yeah. And he said, yeah, no problem, that works for me. And then the next month, I've never had that issue.
I think the thing...
I've been a letting agent since 2005. I've literally never had that issue. But, if you want to create one...
Yeah. I think you get some cases, and again, these are for the small percentage of rogue landlords out there that will ask for a 300...
ramping up 500 quid just for a laugh.
£500 a month. They know that the tenants don't have anywhere else to go because the supply is limited on the market. So they'll try their luck, and tenants have got no option. They get scared into paying it. Okay, that does happen. We're not going to say that it doesn't. But for the ones that we do, we look at other comparables that are on the market. We give those to the tenants. We say, right, the landlords, you've been fantastic tenants. The landlord wants to keep you on. If you look around, the same property currently on the market is getting 1,500 quid. You're currently paying $1,350. The landlord wants to keep you on at the property, so he's just going to increase it by £50 a month instead of £150 a month. So you've got that evidence there. Yeah. And the tenants love it because they know the current market. We give the comparables to them. But with this is basically saying that you need to go through the whole admin process of serving the Section 13 notice to the tenant.
So rather than if you're unhappy with what you've been served, you have to be served it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Have to be served it. So it's another exercise to do when 80% of tenants out there, when you talk to them about the renewal of the tenancy and you talk to them about the market, they're more than happy to agree.
Landlords to sounds like you're in for an extra charge every year from your corporate letting agent.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Exactly. Sounds like it.
It's getting quite sarcastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we need to raise the raise the bar on our level of humour today.
Right, another one. When a rent assessment is carried out by a tribunal, the tribunal cannot decide the rent should be higher than the rent requested by a landlord in their Section 13 notice.
Right.
So it's either got to be at
That or agree or lower.
or lower.
Okay.
Can never be higher. Now, yeah, I'm not too sure about that, because I know that if we serve the Section 13 notice, some of those properties definitely deserve more rent than what we're asking for. But
if the landlord's not asking for more, then a tribunal awarding more is a bit of a waste of time anyway. So
yeah,
you're going to go in and say I want 1,500, and the tribunal says no, they can pay you 1,600. You just say, well, I didn't want 1,600. I wanted 1,500. I've got, again, going back to a practical, real world example. We've got plenty of landlords who could get more if they wanted to, but choose not to.
Yeah,
because they're, like you said, they're the right tenants.
Yeah.
And landlords, shock, horror, landlords have a conscience.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll have to see how that goes.
I don't see why that would be a problem. It's almost like it's been written in such a way to create a headline that they're the heroes.
Yeah, it's just dependent on how they should work. If I said to you, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
I would expect you to say, okay, you want that, but just to let you know, you could get that.
Yeah.
And the minimum amount is this.
Yeah.
That's how anything should work, not just the case of, well, you're asking for that, so I'm not going to give you my opinion on what it could achieve.
Yeah, we're just going to rubber stamp it or not.
So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. PRS database must include details of notices of possession served by a landlord for each property of which they are the landlord. Okay. I mean, if it's in a database of when a notice of possession has been served,
who's going to keep that database and why?
Yeah, and why? That's the reason. There is no why.
Okay.
So we'll see what the why is when they come out with it. But yeah, something
landlords
like that.
Feel another charge coming from your corporate letting agent.
Something like that is
to register it on a database.
Yeah. Why do you need that information? What other information is being, kept on me as a landlord? And what is the purpose of it?
Okay, so it could be a good thing, if we're all being optimistic, that this database could be connected directly to the court. So when you apply for possession, they already have your paperwork.
Yeah.
Imagine
that
world where everything is connected.
Mike has just laid it out. That is Mike's thing. Directly to the courts, make it easier. Mike for PM. Or housing, well, one of them. Just get in there and sort it out, Mike.
Imagine me being a paid-up member of the Labour Party.
Nah, just get in there and sort it out. Tell them what to do and then get out straight away.
Independent contractor.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll see what happens with that. And last one, landlords or those acting on their behalf would be prohibited from inviting or encouraging bids that exceed the amount stated as part of the advertisement or offer of the premises. Well, I mean, it's something that we don't do. We don't get into bidding wars with tenants. We don't invite them to make a bigger offer or encourage them.
Though.
It does happen because, and it's funny you say that, because last week when I was showing people around a property, they actually said that the agent that they saw the other property with has asked them to bid for the property because there's so much interest in it. They're taking bids from all applicants now and basically have a bidding war between them. It's not something that we do. I just don't see the point in doing that. It's a dangerous one,
though, because what's a landlord supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like if you have 10 people view your house, all 10 people want to rent it, and it's the tenant who is making that offer, not the landlord. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, standing in a house, people asking me, well, how much do I need to pay to get it? Because they'll pay an extra £100 a month just to secure a property. But as a landlord, you can be prevented from accepting it. Again, how do you police that?
Yeah.
I put the house on the market for $1,500. Someone turns around and goes, Mike, I want to move in. I'm the perfect tenant because of X, Y, and Z, and I'll pay $1,600.
Yeah. Yeah,
Free
how you
market.
going to...
It is a free market, and the market determines the rent. Whatever someone wants to say to me on social media, the market determines the rent, not the landlord, not the letting agent. Because if the asking price of the rent is wrong, then the house sits empty, the landlord loses a fortune,
Yeah.
the letting agent loses a bit. So it's in no one's interest for a house to sit empty. And if house prices are being pushed up, unfortunately, it's because of tenant demand. We don't like it. It doesn't benefit us in any way, shape, or form, but it is. And that's the start of a rent control.
Yeah, I think so.
Of which will mean more landlords exit the market.
Exactly,
Which
losing
means
control.
either it means there's a shortage of housing or it creates a black market.
Yeah, and just talking about rents, so there's another thing. So I've just got here, rent stabilization, it's called. So this is something that Stephen Cohen, the leader of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, since 2014, has come out with to say that this needs to be included in any renters reform bill. And this is, rent increases would be limited to the lower of local wage growth, or CPI, in England and Wales. Landlords would only be able to increase rent once a year.
Yep, fine with that.
Landlords to give 4 months' notice of an increase instead of the existing 1 month under Section 13, which was due to increase to 2 months instead of 1 month under the Renters Reform Bill, but that obviously never got through, so we're back to square one.
Yep.
And rent review clauses would be banned.
But you can review the rent.
Once a year by Section 13. So rent reviews
So
and clauses.
the clauses where it's set to go up automatically.
Yeah, after 12 months or option to renew at a rent increase, that would...
Yeah, I mean, I would argue
go.
that salaries are rising faster than rents at the moment.
Yeah, because what are we on rentals now? We're on about 8% inflation now on rentals.
Okay, well, salaries are not far off.
Yeah,
that, so
around the same level.
It's London's got its own problems.
Yeah,
You've worked in London for one of the biggest agents in London, and that probably doesn't really reflect the rest of the UK. And I think a lot of the people in the UK don't appreciate just how bloody big London is.
Yeah,
it's about a sixth of the UK is London.
it is big.
Like from a population point of view, and it has its own problems with overseas investment and just property sat empty, and the type of property being built doesn't suit local communities. It only suits overseas investments and yada yada blah blah blah. So it's hard to lump London in with the rest of the country because it's just got its own economy. So I can see why people involved in politics in places like that almost have to go to extremes to protect their local communities because it's bananas.
Yeah. Well, that's what they've... that's it from Labour, so that's what they want to do. So a couple of things in there that aren't too bad, but a high percentage of them don't make sense. Or
I think that's where there's a total mistrust of politics, is because so many hypotheticals, and then the actual engagement and follow through of it is almost impossible to actually do.
Yeah, but I'm sure, we'll hear more about renters reform, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, we probably won't hear a lot about it until the next general election, but I'm sure there'll be people coming out with bits and bobs here and there trying to win votes, and then get to the point where they need to implement them and then never implement them. That's what they tend to do. So whatever I've told you will probably all change in a couple of months.
Okay.
So there you go. There's the news. That is the policies.
Okay, so that's where we are. We're now 5 weeks from the general election. Rishi's been rained on, and that's all I've seen in the news from the point of view of what's going on. Who's your vote going? Are you gonna stick your...
I'm not going to vote for anyone. Okay. I just think they're all useless. So I'd rather just save my time and not bother, and spend my time doing something else that I want to do.
What's your prediction for turnout? Do you think the majority will vote, or the majority will turn their back on it?
I think the majority will still vote, but But I think there'll be a lot more people than before that don't want to make a vote because they've just seen a lot of false promises. No one's really leading it.
That's my point. Is there's a lot of senior. We've made a few jokes about Michael Gove, and he probably deserves them. In fairness, retiring or standing down, my local MP has done exactly the same thing, and he was, in my opinion, he was deeply unpopular, but always elected because it's one of the 5 safest Conservative seats in the UK. And it's been claimed that he's standing down now because he's got a fear that he might lose after, I believe he's been in his seat since 1986.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not a bad pension, I'm sure.
No, he's
sat on that. So
right.
yeah, I think there will be I think the media are probably saying that the Conservatives are going to lose by a long, long way, but there's still a silent number who will always vote that on the basis that they would rather have that than the Labour government coming in. Whether that's right or wrong, frankly, I don't know.
People will think that they need to vote, and rightly they should. You know, it's in their hands. They deserve to vote, but they won't want to vote for Labour. It's just that they've got no other choice.
Yeah,
and that's it. Like I said, you know, I don't think people can relate to any of the leaders at the moment. You know, you got Rishi in the, you know, he made the what was it, the financial list, didn't he, in the UK?
Of course he did,
taking 800 million or whatever it was. So it's like, you know, people are excluded from following him because they feel like they can't relate to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Keir Starmer, who just says everything and then does nothing. So they can't relate to him. And there's no one out there you can really relate to. I might just vote Green Party, actually.
I can't name the leader of the Liberal Democrats, unfortunately.
No. Never even thought about them. Yeah, maybe Green Party. Just let's get with the...
I've got a Tesla. Does that make me part of the Green Party?
Maybe.
Or does that make me part of the problem?
Maybe.
I'm not sure where I am on that scale at the moment. Who knows?
I don't know. We'll look into it. We'll be back about Green Party.
More concise opinions and clarity next week on the Investors Podcast. So thanks for joining us again, and we'll catch you this time next week.
Thank you.